Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill and Ammons Bogus Hangout. I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves and start with Zara today. Zara.
I always seem to be first up. Hi, my name is Sarah Altier, and I do semantic writing for websites.
Terry?
Terry Van Horn. I don't know. Whatever. Don't know what I'm doing these days. Reassessing, I guess.
Steve Gritzer with Steam Driven Media, and we are all doomed.
We are. Doc?
Doc Sheldon of Intrinsic Value SEO.
And I'm Bill Slosky of SEO by the Sea. I'm the director of SEO research at Go Fish Digital. So there was a story in SEO Roundtable recently that John Mueller has told us that anchor text is still a ranking factor at Google. And that actually surprised me a little bit because I think it's become less of a ranking factor. I think anchor text is still relevant. You should include anchor text in links to places because it helps make them more relevant for what you include in the anchor text. But I'm not sure that anchor text has as much value as it used to.
No.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
It diminishes anyhow because, like all things that have been in the algorithms for a long time, as more things get added, they don't seem to do as much as they used to because the pie's not infinite, it's finite. So there's that, but I won't be surprised if links have very little to do with what passages show up in the SERPs that will be here when they introduce passages. I think they're going to get away from links quite a bit on that. It'll be all about text relevance.
So one of the statements that Martin Splitt said about passage ranking was we're moving from pages that are specifically focused upon a narrow topic to pages that have a wider range of topics but may have very relevant information about that narrow topic. And will surface the wide range pages just as more frequently because they do have relevant content.
This would take you back to the whole saying that I used to have that when you write content, you should write to explain the subject. Don't worry about word count. If the question you are trying to answer can be answered in 400 words, then it's 400 words. If it takes 2,000, it takes 2,000. And I have a feeling that this is where Google's going with this.
Well, his example was if you have a page about a certain type of orange, like clementines, it's going to be relevant for queries involving clementine oranges. If you have a page that is broader in scope and is about fruits, but includes information about clementine oranges, it may be seen as by Google's algorithms as less relevant a page for clementine oranges, even though it may have as much or more information about that type of oranges. So the purpose behind passage ranking is to make sure that both pages show up in results for that query.
And another thing is the best answer may not be on a page that ranks.
Right.
Correct? That if you're surfacing more pages like that, they have a better chance of ranking.
It's possible that Google may be ranking pages that are specifically about a narrow topic higher than pages that are about wider range of topics. In that case, a page that's about a narrow topic may rank higher than a page that isn't. But the answer from the broader page may be a better answer.
Right.
But how often is it, really?
Well, their statistic was 7%.
That's the percentage of times they think that algorithm will play a role in ranking pages, in showing up in search results.
But that could be set so that happens only on 7%. They can change that and increase it. Right?
I don't know. They haven't defined how they came up with this 7%. So
No, they haven't.
Well, it would make sense when they roll out any change, and so often we'll see this algorithm update is going to affect 10% of queries, is going to affect 2% of queries, or 30% of queries. If it's a major change that could conceivably affect 30% of queries, it would make sense that they'd want to step that in smaller batches so that they don't have a massive impact on the SERPs.
Google sometimes includes statistics that are misleading. Like
duh. Tell me it ain't so, Billy.
So that seems obvious, but you remember when they talked about RankBrain and they said 15% of queries are new. We've never seen them before, which led lots of people to believe that RankBrain affected 15% of all queries.
Well, that's on us. That's poor interpretation on our part, not on poor representation on Google's part.
Well, that's Google purposefully misdirecting people.
That's Google taking advantage of the fact that we have poor reading comprehension skills.
Or critical thinking skills.
So then you ended up asking somebody at Google how often RankBrain was used, and they said on all queries.
Right.
And
it only affects 15%.
It potentially only affects 15% of ambiguous queries that they've never seen before.
Mm-hmm. Which is a big difference.
And that's been cranking along since it came out, so there may be fewer ambiguous queries than before.
I keep on hearing 15% of all queries are new. They've never seen them before.
Really? Okay.
The other thing we got to keep in mind with their AI efforts, this is a constant evolution too. So it's not just the fact that this query that's never been seen before today has been seen before tomorrow. It's also the fact that the algos are getting smarter at being able to determine what a query is looking for and what a page is representing.
I think there's a rate of change in the world that echoes 15%. There are 15% new things.
I don't know. Based on some of the search terms I see in paid traffic, I think it's just random misspellings of people who can't speak it.
Yeah. If you look at the numbers that Google gives, you take the two queries, right? And just take even a 2-word query. If you reverse the words, still gives the same amount for both. When you look at their keyword tool, it gives the same traffic for both, which means really that those two keywords are sending that traffic. It isn't that amount of traffic.
The keyword planning tool has changed over time.
But Terry, the number of results shown in the SERP for let's say a 2-word query, by reversing the query, I see a lot of times where the number of results will jump from like 8.1 million to 13.2 billion, okay, just by reversing it. So, in the SERPs and what they show you in their keyword research is, it's a stab in the dark.
Well, I think basically that they just count that as one query.
The keyword planner tool used to show you different numbers of results when you had a singular word and then pluralized it. Yep. And now it often, but not always, shows you the same number of results.
Oh, yeah. I've seen it where all I did was reverse 2 words, right?
Yeah.
multiple times, and the number of queries was exactly the same.
And they used to show you compound words and decompounded words, like data center as one word and data center as two words, and show you different numbers of results for each version. And they switched it so that they showed the same amount of results regardless of whether it was compound or decompounded.
Yeah, and I noticed that change when they made it everything broad. What do they call it?
I'm not sure it was related to broad match and exact match.
Oh, okay. I kind of thought the two kind of coincided, happening at the same time.
There was a patent that talked about decompounding words in German, because a lot of times in German language, they compound words together to try to give them new meaning.
Right.
And the patent was sort of aimed at that effort, people doing that. And the singular and the plural, that's you're looking at the same stem for the word.
Yeah.
So it's possible they may be giving you number of results based on a stem.
That's part in that situation, yeah, but I kind of thought that. See, the other thing that didn't make sense was the traffic to those keywords.
Yeah.
Was different. So if you had the same keyword, right, only reversed, and you had a page that ranked for that, and you had another page that ranked for the other one, you would see they were getting different amounts of traffic. So kind of doesn't add up that it's exactly the same, other than the click-through rate, I guess.
Well, there are some singular words that are automatically pluralized, like scissors.
Yeah.
I mean, sneakers.
Yeah.
So you don't buy sneakers. You don't buy sneaker.
You buy sneakers.
Yeah, but the singular of sneak is sneaker.
It is, but you don't go to the store and buy a sneaker.
They'd look at you oddly if you did.
No, I just want the right one.
But just to go back to Steve's point before we wander off somewhere else is that I really think that passages, the reaction to passages is kind of like the reaction to rank brain, and that if we just keep doing what we're doing it well, that's what we need to be doing, and because otherwise the tail is wagging the dog, at least in my opinion.
I think it's too early to tell, because they've been telling us about passage ranking and telling us it's soon coming. But until we see it, I'm not sure we really have an idea what they're talking about exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But it's good to have some theories in place and some stuff in place so you can test it and check it.
Well, pages are going to be indexed the same way they always were.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So even after they announce it, it could take days or even weeks before you actually see those changes.
Yeah, the algorithms that interpret what's on the page and rank content from the pages are going to change. We'll see when it comes out.
Yeah.
So do any of you keep track of Google updates? Do they matter to you?
Nope.
Do you notice them when you see them? Do you look for them?
Don't need to.
Don't really care as long as you're doing your job
If you have
safely.
if you have to watch that kind of stuff, you're not doing it right. That's
you-
the bottom line.
If you
Yep.
pay attention to results, to traffic of the sites that you manage, and something drops, that's when you pay attention to updates. Because then it makes
Yeah,
a
that-
difference.
Yeah,
If
that
I've
makes
got something happen, I will definitely go look at some of the thermometers and see if it looks like an update hit around that time frame. But I don't watch those things just and get nervous because an update just got released this weekend to see if any of my sites are going to tank because I don't walk that close to the cliff.
I was
Here's the like Doc, right? Those other tools are totally useless. They don't give you any information that's usable, right? If I'm going to do that with a tool, I'm going to go to Penguin, give it my analytics, and see how it affected me, right?
right.
These tools are useless. They do not reflect anything at
Well,
all.
they don't. It's just like domain authority. It doesn't really reflect anything meaningful, but it might be coincidentally an indicator. If 4 of those thermometers indicate some massive fluctuation this weekend, that kind of bears out it's worth looking at.
When I was an administrator at Creative Site Forums, used to have somebody come up at least once a month and ask if their website had been affected by a Google update. And my answer to them was always, have you done an audit of your site recently? Have you tried to understand why you might be losing traffic? Have you looked at your competitors' sites? Are they doing something different? Did they get SEOs? Did they take away all your traffic? Have the searchers changed in how they search for what you offer? I mean, I've seen in Google Trends lack of searcher interest in some things that we'd optimized for in the past. It's like you refer to a certain type of mortgage on your website and you look at trends and you notice that people stopped using that phrase last year to refer to the same type of mortgage. That would be a good reason for a drop in traffic. You can't just say, I've been afflicted by a Google update. Oh my God. the sky's falling.
like apartment homes are now, or condominiums are now apartment homes, So
Yeah.
I never hear anybody talking about condominiums anymore. It's apartment homes.
Sectional couches are now sofas.
Oh God, I worked for a site. They would have went nuts if I did that. Oh my God. Be like I slayed somebody. They had a multi-page guide just on how to name pieces of furniture.
They had a style guide.
Yeah.
A style guide.
It's like when I worked at Harvard Extended Education, and somebody from their office would always say, never use continuing education as a keyword. The dean doesn't like it.
Right. Even though that's probably the most searched on term.
Definitely the most searched on term in certain industries.
Yeah. But not executives. Executives don't have executive education.
No, they don't.
They take certificate programs.
So he knew that his audience wouldn't be interested in something using those terms.
He didn't want the term used on the website. It didn't have the same academic appeal to them. It was more like
What
a
was
Monday
the term?
like
What was the term that they used? It was some kind of program.
executive education as opposed to continuing education.
Okay.
Continuing education is something that someone in a trade uses, like a doctor or a lawyer
Yeah,
or a
probably
plumber.
SEO,
less competitive
plumber,
in terms of
yeah.
search volume.
SEO, anything where the things are changing and you got to stay on top of it.
Mm-hmm. But if you want to learn about things like negotiation
Right.
or acquisition of companies or so on,
Right.
that's not continuing education.
Right. That's re-education.
Executive education. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the continuing education, I think, has developed a bad name in some industries, like doctors. When the organization that's publishing continuing education is a pharmaceutical company, and they're paying you to go on cruises to take the classes.
Mm.
They're not really teaching you anything. They're bribing you, possibly.
No possibilities in it. They're bribing you.
I mean, teachers take continuing education because they always want it. I've forgotten how it works, but
Those are called paid holidays here in Canada.
they get, X units and then their pay grade goes up and stuff like that.
Yeah, I taught an internet literacy class at a community college, and it was a class for teachers, so that they can earn a certificate, and the certificate would give them a raise.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because I taught a poetry class at the university, and I was like, oh my gosh, all these people are here because they love poetry. And we went around the room, and every single one of them, I'm here to get my units, And so it was kind of a tough road the first week and a half or so.
No, it was a good class because the teachers made sure I knew how to teach them.
Right, exactly. And the same thing, it was for me. It was once we got over the initial I hate poetry business, and then people started doing the work, and things happened, and it was, because the next astounding thing I said was, because they said, well, how do you know that the kids are getting it, because this was teaching poetry to kids, right? And I said, the light in their eyes, and they're all, and then as we started working, that and someone would go, and someone would go, oh, the light in the eyes, and then by the end of a couple of weeks, they all got it. But it was and they actually loved it because it was fun. We actually wrote poetry, but they were all there for their units. That's why they were there initially.
There was another article about anchor text recently. And again, it was John Mueller, and it was
Right.
Longer anchor text adds more context. Having more words in your anchor text, it doesn't necessarily make your rank higher, but it allows more preciseness.
What was Terry's comment? I loved it. It was something about common sense. Oh, common sense can go a long way. Yeah. with, click here, anchor text, or, something longer. It's a little more precise.
So what's too long? How long do you make links, anchor text in links?
As long as it takes to send the message that I want to send in the anchor text.
Yeah. Okay. I try to keep it at 4 or 5 words at the most. I suppose you could do longer, but after that, there's this great big huge underline, and then it looks kind of spammy.
Yeah,
I generally try to focus it on the user. If I want to make it a little bit longer to ensure that the reader can understand what the intent of this link is, what he's going to find there, then, if I have to go 8, 10, 12 words, fine, if that's what it takes. But normally, 3 or 4 words is typically probably enough.
I think confidence makes a difference. Gives a person who's reading the link confidence about what they'll find at the other side of the link once they click through.
That's a really good point. So if you've introduced, whatever the phrase is that has the anchor text, and you've already introduced it with whatever you have to say, that by the time they get to the anchor text itself, they have an understanding of what benefit they're going to get from that, from clicking there.
You're sending a message to them that the page they may visit is about a certain topic.
Yes.
Right.
And giving them the confidence that is what they're going to find on that page makes it more likely than not that they'll click through to that page if they're interested.
That, to me, it depends on the context that the link's in. If the context around it describes the page they're going to, then it doesn't need a lot of anchor text. However, if it's slightly not exactly on topic, I'll give more of an explanation in the anchor text so people understand.
Right. If the link is in something like a main navigation, it doesn't necessarily have the context of the words around the link.
Right. Something like that. And sometimes you want to link to a page that's on topic because you're mentioning it there, but it's not part of the main topic. So you want to give it a little more context by putting it in the link. Anchor text.
So Google may sometimes read a window around a link and look at the words that if you use something like click here as your anchor text, what are the 5 or 6 words before the click here or the 5 or 6 words after? It may gain context and knowledge of what that link goes to based on that. That's sometimes referred to as associated text.
Yeah, a heading would really help too, if in fairly close proximity.
It's possible, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
So if somebody clicks on a link repeatedly, that's not a ranking signal.
only if you're a local SEO.
So
that's the only place where that's flown.
So ClickBot doing it's not going to help.
No, it only affects your paid traffic by burning your budget.
That it does, yep.
Mm.
However, I did think about that. And it would take a very large scale, but it would work because Google does use click-throughs. They do analyze clicks.
Yeah.
So you couldn't, I think you could maintain a position like that. it would help maintain a position, but I don't think it would get you into that position.
I've seen some patents that say that things like answer boxes sometimes are localized, locally significant queries, so locally significant results in search results. You search for something like hospital, and Google will sometimes show a link to the nearest hospital to you as a high-ranking result. And sometimes it's possible that those maintain those positions based on whether or not people actually click on them.
Now, would you say that that has to do with intent? Because most people, if they're searching for a hospital, they want the closest one too.
Well, yeah, it's and someone searching for pizza wants lunch,
Right,
so they want nearby pizzerias.
right.
But I had a client who had a hospice, and he was looking at ranking reports, and it was showing him that it was ranking number 4 for hospice, and it was in the county that he was located.
Right. If you went to another city, it wouldn't rank number 4.
Right.
Was it in the local pack?
Don't think it was. I'm not sure that there were hospices in a local pack in that county.
Okay.
But the same type thing with answer boxes sometimes, and answer boxes can be local results too. Are we expecting an algorithm update before Christmas or in January 21?
Yeah, I was reading that.
I would say after the history of the Florida update in 2003, it's been kind of rare that we get updates this late in the year.
Yeah, that's why the one last week that they're talking about, no way. Like, that's just wacky tools. No update, just wacky tools.
But I wouldn't be surprised for a January update.
Well, they've done that before a couple times. Right around mid-January, they rolled one out.
Yeah.
That's being confirmed?
In the past, I'm talking about.
No, that's being confirmed.
I can't say with any surety.
Yeah.
I don't recall.
I would go to Penguin and check that out. That's one of the good things about it, is it actually shows past as well.
Mm.
That's what makes it a real useful tool, whereas the others are just where people waste time or get worked up over nothing.
Yeah.
Because how many times has the alarm gone off in the last 3 months and absolutely nothing happened?
Well, it's like that article in SEO Roundtable that you had on your list, showing the charts from a number of those tools, and talking about how there were some significant spikes. And you look at the left bar, and they were not significant at all. They were very minor fluctuations, in my opinion.
But they are big fluctuations compared to what happened last week or the week before, which is what those are showing.
I wouldn't even call them big on that standard. I mean, especially when you look at some of the major updates that have rolled out in the past, where you see a 30%
SEO
jump.
round. They have ads to sell, Doc. They have to put the ads around something.
And Google has told us in the past that they do up to like 3 updates a day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they make changes to the core ranking algorithm often.
And on that particular one, if you read down, a lot of it was rolled back shortly after.
Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying they are doing up to 3 a day. They're just not necessarily major updates.
Right.
So how big of an update does an update have to be an update?
Well, I guess it depends on how much news there is.
I mean, if an update only affects e-commerce websites, we're sure going to hear a lot of turmoil and concern about churn at places like Webmaster World.
Same thing. Why go there? Like, if you don't think you're going to find mostly spammers there, well, you don't really know the place you're looking at, do you? I don't know. If I want to find good techniques, I'll go to places where I know they talk about good techniques.
Well, I just know it's a place that Barry Schwartz tends to go to try to find information about updates.
Yeah.
But he also looks at Black Hat World.
Yeah. He also does local universities' website too.
Yeah.
That's where most of the local news comes from. But, I mean, Black Hat World, and even the thing is, even when there were cleaner forums, he didn't use those. He only used those ones.
Well, isn't it fair, though, to say that the folks that frequent those forums are probably playing more on the cutting edge of things?
No,
knife edge?
Not at all. Not at all. Anybody can cheat. Anybody can cheat.
Well, sure.
You think they know any more than you or I do? No.
I think that they tend to use techniques that you and I typically shy away from because it puts our clients more at risk. And
Because
those guys
they're not
are
sustainable.
Well, the why doesn't matter, Terry. What I'm saying is, I'm just saying that those clowns are probably playing in murkier water than you and I typically do. So you might hear something different there than you would on a white hat forum, because those guys are playing games. They're walking on the knife's edge a lot of times.
Not doing anything I couldn't do if I didn't want to.
It's not a matter of what you could do. It's a matter of what you do as a matter of course to not jeopardize your client's business.
Right. Right. So why report on the stuff that can get people in trouble when you could find just as much good stuff to write about?
I think it's because he's a journalist and he's looking at both sides of the coin to gather his information. To me, that's a reasonable journalist approach.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't have to agree with it all. In fact, you'll see a lot of times he'll flat end up saying, either in his article or in the comments, that I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm saying what has been said, shown, represented. He's just put it out there for thought.
Right.
To me, that's what a journalist should be doing.
Right.
I don't need
I would
anybody
disagree with that. I would say there are things that you shouldn't talk about, especially in a forum like that where there's people just learning. Probably not the best place for them to be picking up tips. Just saying, because they don't really have the information to make the decisions as to what that will do to their clients.
Well, that's true.
Either way, it's his choice to do that. I'm just saying, I think his time would be better spent finding better discussions. That's just my opinion.
given the amount of content he has to generate in a very short period of time, you know, he's kind of limited to how much research he can do on some of that stuff. So going to some fount of discussions and topics, probably somewhat of a necessity for him.
There's so many open groups on Facebook and LinkedIn now. No need. Sorry. No, I'm not disagreeing with you, Doc. I'm just, I have a personal opinion of why it is, but I don't want to say it. Well, I could say that I think all journalists have become lazy and don't really work for stories anymore. They take the easy route.
Well,
and that's not just him. That's journalists in general.
Yeah, I would agree to the extent that unfortunately what used to be the norm, the acceptable approach for journalism, has changed dramatically, and now it's basically like, link bait. Whatever you do that sells more ads, that's what you need to do. Yeah.
Journalism is if you watch a press conference now, right? It's like you're watching Twitter all fucking day. No, seriously. The questions they ask these people are just asinine.
Well, even if
asking
you watch the presidential press conference,
when you're going to get your shot. Well, first of all, nothing's even being decided yet if anything's going to be used.
Just watching
they haven't passed all the certification.
Just watching the president's press conferences, it jumps out at you pretty quickly that the questions they're asking are not meant to get meaningful answers to the people. They're meant to stir controversy.
Right.
To get a reaction out of him or his press secretary, or to make points for themselves that, they're not tough questions. They're not the Barbara Walters of 20 years ago, okay? They're not asking piercing questions to get good, meaningful answers. They're trying to stir up some shit.
And they aren't really doing good investigation around it.
But the responses that the president tends to give them.
Oh, well, that's a whole different. That's a different, First of all, you'd have to be talking.
I mean, as he told Leslie Stahl back in 2016, he often responds in ways to demean them, to make them look like they're terrible journalists. And he's effective at doing that.
That's so they won't attack him.
And so they won't ask him. And so they won't ask him difficult questions.
Right.
It's a nasty question.
Yeah.
You're a
nasty woman.
I'm the president of the United States. You shouldn't be asking me things like that.
Or you can't talk to me like that. I'm the president of the United States. In a press conference, I almost fell off my chair.
Yeah. I'm really disappointed somebody didn't say, well, we're just about to fix that.
Well, for now.
Yeah, what time is it?
We got 53 days left. Yeah.
Just another topic that was there, and I was kind of wondering how you all thought about it, was JavaScript. And some other things. I'm of the theory now that Google doesn't really download your HTML code. I don't think they really take it. I think they grab a bag of words, like I said in the thing, and then classify where those words are to get location and context, etc.
Curious, what do you base that opinion on, though, Terry?
On looking at protocol buffers, how they work. That's a big part of it. And how they describe the indexing. Caffeine. Because when they do caffeine, if they want to see the HTML, they have to put it through a separate program that puts it into HTML. That was my first clue.
I have read some patents that talk about document object models rendering, and that making a difference to how they might index something or rank it. There aren't too many of those, but there are a few. And when they talk about topics like page segmentation, they
Right.
talk about document object models and rendering.
Right.
And knowing when to segment a page requires that you know how that page appears to searchers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to depend on the topic. It's going to depend on the process they're trying to improve upon.
Yeah, I haven't been able to really get any answers to that exactly, but
you remember some of the SEO tricks that people used to do on web pages? Like there was a CSS trick and there was a table trick where you made things appear in different places than they actually appeared in your code.
yeah, I've used the HTML table trick where you leave an empty cell so it goes into the body without doing any of the other stuff. Yeah.
So if content renders, it's different than content that's maybe just in the code on the page.
Right. What I meant was they don't take your HTML code and have it, right? They take the words on the page out of the page,
Right.
and then I think they classify those words, and that tells them what HTML, etc. they were in.
And what I'm saying is that sometimes they have to do that rendering to based upon the process they're trying to understand. And if it's something like page segmentation, where the placement of the word in the page is important, if they're using, for instance, if they're using a data wrapper, and the
Right.
format is important, they may want rendering in place.
Yeah. Part of that is also based on something Martin said when they were talking about the order of headings and how having them in a proper order, sometimes they had to put them what they had through Lexar, which basically takes what they have and puts it in an HTML format, puts the HTML back there, which is how I understand it. That's why I'm looking closer at that, Bill, and going to actually try and get some answers by posing direct questions to some people privately and then asking them if I can write about it. Because there are parts of that, as we discussed, that I'm wondering, there's other issues to think about as well, why we shouldn't talk about that. Which if I said why would give it away. But are you confident, Doc, that JavaScript gets indexed properly?
No.
And immediately?
No, I think that they're quite capable of doing it, but I don't think that it would make sense for them to just arbitrarily decide they're going to start doing that across the board anytime they encounter JavaScript, because that would, imagine what that would do to their machine cycles. Just on a continuous basis. I just can't see them needing to do that. So, you look at it, at what point is there a diminishing return? I think that like you're saying, they're going to look and they're going to see if it seems as if in this particular instance, in this DOM, do we need to look at the Java? And they can, but I think they're going to avoid it when it's not really going to render any benefit. And that makes me wonder too now, is the mobile crawler, indexer, I should say, is the mobile version taking an entirely different approach to the desktop version that we're all so more or less familiar with? I wonder if they're looking at things entirely differently because of the rendering issues, because it's going to render differently on a mobile device, on various mobile devices, than it does typically on a desktop. So it would kind of make sense that rather than looking and determine which of these 16 possibilities applies to this page, they simply attack it from the back door and say, okay, like you're talking about, let's strip it all out. Let's take this bag of words, and then we can reapply, when necessary, we can reapply a stripped down HTML structuring to it. And if need be, perhaps we'll go back and look at the JavaScript. But I doubt that it's often. It just doesn't make sense from an operational standpoint that they would do it if it wasn't necessary. Bill?
Think about cached copies of pages and how Google might use those other than just to provide a view of the pages when the server might be down, which is their excuse for catching copies of pages. They say we catch them because if the server's down, you can still access the content on the page. Well, it provides Google with pages that are on their servers that they can study at their leisure. So if they're looking at how pages render, they're collecting the information to display the pages rendered. And they have all these cached copies of pages that they can study.
Well, the other thing to think about, too, is the fact that pulling that bag of words, the way you term it, occupies a much smaller memory capacity than rendered content. You know, it's infinitely, it's a tiny fraction of the storage space when you look at the billions of pages they're trying to index. So that another reason that it makes sense that they would want to strip it out.
You could remove millions of lines of stuff from WordPress alone by doing that.
Billions.
Like 2/3 of any page in WordPress is probably cascading style sheets that aren't properly implemented. i.e., if you have cascading style sheets, you shouldn't have to write the style sheet into the page again.
You don't have to inline it, yeah.
No. Actually, inline is the fastest way to do it, which is why on AMP, most CSS is inline.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, you don't have to do both.
Right. And actually, cascading style sheets are slower than doing it inline. Because you don't, how much of a style sheet do you use on every page? Not much.
Nope.
Like half of it, we used to put in the body tag. If you think about it, a lot of that was in the body tag back in the day.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that has become a real mystery that is not very well understood, how Google is actually crawling and indexing. Because they call passage indexing when it's not actually indexing,
Right.
which doesn't help.
No, you're right. There's still, and not even among just the noobs. I mean, even among some of the folks that have been around for 15 years, there's still a lot of disagreement or confusion. I'll
bet you $50 that if you asked 100 SEO, what is a protocol buffer?
75 of them wouldn't have a clue.
Right. Wouldn't know. Or they would tell you, like me, I would have said, oh, that's a programming thing, because that's where I knew about it. As soon as I saw protocol buffer, I knew exactly what it was because we use them all the time in ASP programming. That's why in ASP you can program in multiple languages. You just have to tell it which one. So I've had Perl and ASP running on the same page.
Yeah, you're getting over my head now.
Okay, I didn't mean to do that. Just saying that those are really neat things, protocol buffers.
Yeah.
And they actually, when you read about them, there's another piece in between, which is what does, I believe, does the classifications.
Breaking
And
up a
in
little
that
bit,
class
Phil.
ESS, where it tells the location. Pardon me?
You broke up a little bit.
My break. Oh, okay. Anyhow, I'm done for now. Anything new, Bill?
So Yoast is doing something with XML files.
No, I was wondering about that. Google does not support nested sitemaps. Nested indexes. So if you made an index of indexes, which is what I think Yoast does. I haven't seen one in a long, long time, but that's how I think it's done. If so, then that's
thinking
not
about
good.
a sitemap in XML sitemap index that indexes XML sitemaps.
Right. You can have
Well,
an
I think-
index, but you can't have an index of indexes.
Yeah, well, you've got a sitemap index XML, and then within that you've got another index A XML, and then within that you've got a bunch of pages or posts that they won't recognize that index within an index. I don't know that Yoast does that. I haven't used Yoast for years, so
I know that they do they do categories in separate
Yeah.
sitemaps,
yeah.
which would do
Unless
the
you turn
same
it off.
thing. Well,
So you have a sitemap index, but you don't have sitemap indexes within the sitemaps indexed.
Yeah, what you'll have is you'll have your sitemap index, and then within that you might have a page, sitemap post, sitemap category, sitemap tags, but you would not have another index of categories, for instance.
right.
All right. So, but
So
Yoast
you can have an index, right? And then you can have a sitemap inside of that index, several sitemaps, but you can't have an index tag and then other indexes inside of that nested.
Now, basically, index has to be top level.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you show the lower levels below.
But I
So
don't know if Yoast does that or not. I haven't used it.
Yeah, I
for
wasn't
long.
sure, and I quit using that plug like, oh.
Yeah, no, Yoast does a sitemap index, but it doesn't include sitemap indexes within the sitemap index.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever seen a site that actually did that, to tell you the truth. I don't recall, because I use sitemaps a lot when I'm going to a site, especially like for an audit. I want to see what their hierarchy looks like.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll usually pull up their sitemap. I don't think I've ever seen an index within an index.
This guy did it because he said he had 10 million URLs. So you might have to do it there, but it won't work. And you can only have up to 500 sitemaps in a sitemap index. So the smart thing to do is to make one of your sitemaps only new material and let it go, have so many in it. And as you add them, they eventually go down to the lower indexes. And that way, Google could even learn that, hey, this file has the fresh files in it, the fresh URLs in it. Grab this one first.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would pick that up, Bill?
certainly think so, wouldn't you?
There is a white paper by some Googlers called Beyond the Call of Duty, which talks about XML sitemaps and different strategies used by PubMed, Amazon, and one other large site, where they talked about strategies for making sure that fresh content got indexed.
Ah, okay.
And that sounds like one of those may have used.
Oh, okay. It just made sense to me that would be the best way to do it, because you're also removing your.
If you get a news site like New York Times, you generate
Right.
lots of pages.
Yeah.
If you want to continue to have all those indexed, you find a way of making sure that the fresh content and new stuff shows up on one sitemap that gets indexed all the time.
Right. And I'm sure, like anything, Google would see the refresh rate on that, and the others are pretty well stagnant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because what's the limit on a sitemap? Is it 50,000
50K.
URLs?
50,000 URLs.
Yeah, okay. I knew it was high. So if you could have 500 indexes, that would cover what? 2.5 million pages? No, 20.5. No. I need to get out the calculator. It's higher than two numbers.
25,
How much?
25, 2.5,
25 million.
5 times 5.
2.5 times 10 to the 6.
Come on. I flunked grade 9 math twice. Yeah, the second time the teacher said I flunked you, but I didn't want to have you a third year, so I passed you.
That may be how I've managed to skim by a time or two.
She said, all good things must come to an end, Terry. I'm sorry. So we figured out XML sitemaps. Good.
There you go.
We've accomplished something for the day.
Some good info.
We're at the top of the hour. So it's been fun again. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, everybody. Have a good week.
Yeah.
Goodbye, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks,
Stay
everyone.
safe, stay
Till
healthy.
next time.